From Heartbreak to Healing. The Aftermath of a Broken. Our story began like a scene from a romance novel. James and I met at a friend's wedding, and from the moment we locked eyes, there was a spark between us. I was drawn to his charm, his confidence, and his way of making me feel seen, even in a crowded room. We spent the entire night talking and laughing, lost in each other's company. By the time the sun began to rise, we were holding hands, both silently wondering if we'd just found the one we'd been waiting for. Over the next few years, our love deepened. He became my best friend, my confidant, my partner in every sense of the word. James was thoughtful and affectionate, the kind of man who'd surprise me with breakfast in bed or take me on spontaneous weekend getaways. Friends envied our relationship, calling us the perfect couple. I felt like I had won the lottery in love. When he proposed, it was in the most romantic way. He took me to the beach where we'd had our first date, got down on one knee as the sun was setting, and asked me to be his forever. I said yes, tears streaming down my face, believing with every fiber of my being that this man was my soulmate. But looking back, I realized that there were cracks in our relationship even then, tiny fractures that I ignored because I wanted so desperately to believe in our love. The first signs of trouble. The changes were subtle at first, small things that seemed insignificant but, over time, began to add up. James, once attentive and present, started coming home later and later. His once affectionate gestures became infrequent, almost robotic, and our conversations, once filled with laughter and dreams, felt stilted and rehearsed. I'd ask about his day, and he'd give me vague one-word answers, avoiding eye contact and retreating into his phone. I brushed it off, telling myself that he was just stressed from work, or that maybe this was just a phase. But as the days turned into weeks, I couldn't ignore the growing distance between us. I'd catch him staring at his phone with a faint smile, only to quickly put it away when I walked into the room. There were late-night texts he'd dismiss as just work, and phone calls he'd take outside, his voice low and hushed. One evening, I noticed a new name on our shared credit card statement: Clara. It was a charge from a restaurant we'd never been to, on a night when he'd told me he was working late. My heart sank, but I convinced myself that it was nothing. Perhaps she was a client, a colleague. Surely he'd tell me if there was anything to worry about. Doubt turns to desperation. But the doubts began to consume me. I became hyper-aware of every little thing he did, every message he received, every moment he spent away from home. Our relationship, once my safe haven, felt like a minefield. I was constantly on edge, wondering if I was being paranoid, or if my worst fears were coming true. I tried to bring it up gently, asking if everything was okay, if he was happy, if there was anything we needed to work on. But he'd brush me off, saying he was just tired, that I was imagining things, that our marriage was fine. "You're overthinking, love," he'd say, kissing me on the forehead with a smile that felt hollow. In a last-ditch attempt to salvage our relationship, I suggested we go on a weekend getaway. I hoped that some time away from the stress of daily life would help us reconnect. He agreed, albeit reluctantly, and we spent 2 days in a cozy cabin by the lake. But even then, I could feel his mind drifting elsewhere. He'd excuse himself to take phone calls, his tone tense and his face pale. I tried to ignore it, but by the end of the trip, I felt more alone than ever. The slip-up one evening, as I was tidying up, his phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. He was in the shower, and for a moment, I hesitated. I didn't want to invade his privacy, but the nagging suspicion had become too powerful to ignore. The screen showed a message from Clara. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Miss you already." My heart stopped. The world around me blurred, and I felt a wave of nausea. I tried to tell myself there must be a mistake, that I was misinterpreting things. But deep down, I knew. I knew that this wasn't just a misunderstanding. When James came out of the shower, I confronted him. I held up the phone, my hands shaking, and asked him to explain. His face went pale, his mouth opening and closing as he searched for words. He tried to deny it at first, saying it was just a friend, that I was overreacting. But as I pressed him, the truth came spilling out. He admitted he'd been seeing Clara for months. She was a colleague, someone he met at work, someone who understood him in ways he claimed I couldn't. He insisted that it was just a fling, that it didn't mean anything, but his words felt like a slap to my face. The man I thought I knew, the man I had promised to spend my life with, had betrayed me in the most painful way. The unraveling. The days that followed were a blur of pain and anger. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight. Friends and family tried to console me, but their words felt hollow. The man I had built my life around, the man I had trusted with my heart, had lied to me. The love we shared had become a lie, a cruel joke played on me by someone I thought was my soulmate. James tried to apologize, saying he'd made a mistake, that he wanted to work things out. But his words felt empty. The damage was done, and I knew that I could never trust him again. Picking up the pieces. The divorce was brutal. James fought for everything, as if punishing me for daring to leave him. We spent months in court, dividing our assets, our memories, our lives. By the end of it, I was exhausted, a shell of the person I had once been. But slowly, I began to heal. I threw myself into work, surrounding myself with supportive friends and family. I took up new hobbies, went on solo trips, and rediscovered the parts of myself I had lost in the chaos of our relationship. I learned to love myself again, to value my own worth, and to realize that I deserved better. Moving forward. It took time, but eventually I found peace. I forgave James, not for him, but for myself. I refused to let his betrayal define me, to let it haunt me forever. I am stronger now, wiser, and more resilient. My story is a painful one, a reminder that love is not always what it seems, but it is also a story of growth, of resilience, and of finding the strength to move forward. Because when love becomes a lie, we are forced to confront our own truths and rediscover who we are. What happens when the life you built on love turns out to be a lie? In this raw and emotional journey, I recount the painful discovery of my husband's betrayal and the unraveling of our perfect marriage. From the first signs of distance to the gut-wrenching moment of truth, I faced heartbreak, anger, and despair. But in the ashes of broken trust, I found strength, self-worth, and a path to healing. This is not just a story of infidelity, it's a testament to resilience and the courage it takes to start anew.